Why did I cut a fringe I was never going to style? Hey legends, this is I Am Manifestation. I'm your conscious manifestation coach, Cerise, and I help you get out of your own way so you can manifest your version of an awesome fucking life. In today's video, I wanted to talk to you about the difference between inspired action, what it really is, and forced action, and whether or not it's okay to knowingly take inspired action. Let's go. So, as a law of assumption coach, it's really drilled into us that we don't have to do anything. We don't have to take any action. We don't have to put the action into attraction like the law of attraction manuals for conscious manifestation tell us that we do need to do. And that's true. You don't have to knowingly take any action, but you are taking action. Like you are putting the action into attraction, whether you're aware of the fact that you're doing it or not. Okay. So that is where inspired action comes in. And inspired action is essentially just the same thing as intuition, although under the spiritual umbrella, intuition is, we're being told in a sense, because I used to consider myself a spiritual person before coming across the law of assumption. Intuition, we're being told, is like the universe or a higher power, something outside of us steering us towards things. But I think if you look back, if you can relate to this, where you were kind of more spiritual, and the reason why I say I'm not so much spiritual now is because I understand conscious manifestation from more of a neuroscience perspective, and like definitely think there's more to the quantum physics side of things than we know. There's a lot of stuff that sort of there's a lot of things in quantum physics that coaches confidently say explains manifestation. I say that it says it could be not only possible but is probable. I think that we just don't understand. I think it is. Okay, I think it's definitely something happening in the quantum level that but we don't understand it yet. And I don't like that there are coaches saying this proves it. And I'm like, I don't think that we can use that as scientific proof just yet. Like it aligns a lot with what we're talking about, but I don't feel comfortable saying that it proves it just yet. Anyway, so I understand conscious manifestation from more of a neuroscience perspective. However, I definitely can look at things that I used to believe in terms of spirituality now that I initially shunned when I came across the law of assumption, because I was like, oh, all the spiritual shit, it's bullshit. I can look at that now and just be like, oh, that was just the ancient like people's way of explaining what we're now starting to understand more with science, whether it be neuroscience, quantum physics, psychology, all those things. And same with law of attraction. I can listen to a lot of law of attraction teachers now that sounded like they were speaking fucking gibberish to me years and years ago, that now makes sense because I understand things from the law of assumption manual of conscious manifestation. So it's essentially all teaching us the same thing. It's just that all of our minds work differently. We all understand things from a different place and in a different way. We learn differently, et cetera, et cetera. But I still teach law of assumption. I just want to make that really clear. However, I do have an understanding of it now to the extent of being able to explain the function of feelings, for example, in manifestation. Like they're there for a reason. Then yes, they are manifestations of our thoughts. That's something I'll make another video about because I'm going off on a tangent now. So intuition is essentially your inspired action. However, it's not coming from anything outside of you. And as far as what I believe now, who knows, that may evolve over time, the more I sort of practice conscious manifestation. But I don't believe that it's coming from anything outside of you. And also, I don't think that it's always steering you in the right direction, in the sense that intuition is inspired action, which is steered by your subconscious, which is programmed by your thoughts and previous belief systems if you don't change them, because essentially those beliefs will just keep running on autopilot in a loop until you break the pattern of it and change that loop to a more positive loop, or a loop that's more in line with what you want. So taking So that's what inspired action is as far as where my head's at about conscious manifestation now. But let's talk about knowingly take inspired action. What's forced action? Forced action is always taken from a place of fear, or inaction taken from a place of fear. Same thing. It's going to backfire just as much if you try to force something by taking action or manipulate things by taking action as it would by not taking action from a place of fear that if you do something that you actually want to do, that it's not going to lead to your manifestation because you were told by law of assumption teachers that you don't have to take action. And so that's instilled a fear in you that you're not supposed to take action if it's anything to do with your manifestation. So forced action or inaction, both no bueno, no deal. Okay. We're not doing that. It's going to take some time to get to that point to recognize when you're acting or taking or not taking action from a place of fear. So I don't want you to everyone's putting pressure on themselves to be 100% good with their self-concept and 100% on top of their thoughts and blah, blah, blah. That's not human. Okay. You're never going to be at 100% with those things. And trying to put the pressure on yourself to do that is actually creating more detours to your manifestation than not. So stop it. You're a human. You're experiencing the human experience in this realm, school, whatever you like, planet, however you think of this experience that we're having, simulation, whatever. I don't personally know 100% what I believe it is. But what I do feel very confident in is we're having a human experience, and I liken it to a video game or any kind of game whereby anything that you can conceive of doing, you can do because that is written in the code, sort of, so to speak, of the game of life that we live in. So you think that that's infinite, but for all we know, if it were a simulation, infinite probably has a limit because parameters need to be put on the game of life. And that's where the human experience comes in. So now we know what inspired action is. Now we know what forced action is. How do we knowingly take inspired action? Now, a lot of you aren't going to be there yet. And this is why it took me so long to talk about this on TikTok, because for those of you who don't know, I've been more consistent on TikTok for a long time before deciding to put more focus on YouTube. So I've always really encouraged, just because I know so many who come across my content are new to all of this, that you should not knowingly take action, because a lot of you are going to be taking action under the guise of inspired action when it's actually coming from a place of fear. And like I said before, a lot of you are also not doing things because you're worried that you're going to interfere with you getting your manifestation if you do take action. So knowingly taking action, inspired action, is totally fine. I did it. I have an example of how I knowingly took inspired action in the video where I talk about getting a pay rise, and also lowering the rent increase that was initially proposed to me or told to me that I had to do, that I was notified of. So I'll link that here or wherever the fucking card is. I don't know. I don't even know if I can do the cards. I tried to do it on my last video and I don't think it showed up. Anyway, so that's an example of how I've knowingly taken inspired action in my life. That's better. That was pissing me off. So can you knowingly take inspired action? Yes, with a few caveats. So get a pen and paper if you need to, or get your notes out on your phone and put these down, and make sure that you're checking in with yourself with these things before you knowingly take inspired action or knowingly decide not to do something that you may normally have done. Because a lot of the times, like I said, you're taking forced action because you think that because it seems like the logical link to your manifestation that you have to go, even though you're feeling really anxious about going, for example, to an event where like someone might be, or that has something to do with the business that you want to create or whatever it might be. And as you might have realized, if you look back, a lot of the times where you've decided to go to something just because someone's going to be there, or just because it seems like the logical link to your manifestation, even though it doesn't feel good for you to go to those things, it's backfired, hasn't it? It's either backfired in the sense that something actually shit has gone down, or you've just felt crappy the whole time. We're not meant to feel crappy. Our feelings are there to tell us where our thoughts and belief systems are, but also to steer us in the right direction or away from the things that aren't conducive to our manifestation or what we're thinking in line with mostly. Okay, so the first thing that you want to do to check in with yourself, make note, self-check-in. Number 1, am I taking this action out of fear that if I don't take this action, that I won't get what I want? Flip side of that, am I deciding not to take this action out of fear that if I do take it, it's going to fuck with my manifestation? If it's coming from a place of fear, it's no bueno. Number 2, you can take this action if you can be unattached to the result of that action. Flip side, not taking that action. Can you be okay with what does or doesn't happen in your physical world? Circumstances don't matter, remember. Can you be okay with whatever result comes of that action or inaction? So an example that I gave in my video about manifesting a pay rise in my part-time job, I asked for the pay rise. I knowingly took that inspired action, but I knew that I was going to get more money regardless of whether I got the pay rise. So I was unattached to the result of that. Definitely go and watch that video because I talk about the rental increase situation as well, and obviously in more detail. If you think there's any risk of you spiraling and panicking and therefore being thrown off your thoughts, don't do it. 3, when you think about taking that action or not taking that action that you want to take, does it bring up any opposing emotions like anxiety, for example? If it does, then you probably shouldn't be doing what you were considering doing or the opposite of not doing, if that makes sense, because we're talking action and inaction, both backfire if done from a place of fear or essentially forced action. Now, what I want to add to this, right, is you don't want to get into the habit of constantly knowingly taking inspired action, even if you are coming at it from that place. Why? Essentially, this can very easily be a slippery slope into micromanaging your manifestations. And the action that you're taking might not necessarily be, even if it results in something in line with your manifestation, it may not necessarily be part of the most efficient route to your manifestation. And if you've been thinking in line with the end goal, the most efficient route was already in the process. And then by taking that, like knowingly taking that inspired action, you don't know, like it could be part of the most efficient route, but it also could be creating a detour to your manifestation, taking it off the most efficient route. So here and there, it's okay to do, but don't do it all the time. Because again, if something was already in process, the cogs were turning in the right direction kind of thing, and then you've done that, your most efficient route needs to recalibrate. Think of Google Maps. If you are following Google Maps, right, and then you take a wrong turn, you take a side road or whatever that's not on the main road that Google Maps is trying to take you on, you then need to course correct, and that's adding time to your manifestation. And every time you do that, you're adding time to your route. Your Google Maps has to recalibrate. Your metaphorical Google Maps is having to recalibrate every time you do that. Well, not every time. Again, you may be taking action that happens to be part of the most efficient route, but because you don't know that, sometimes it's better just to not. Oftentimes, the inspired action that you take that you're unaware of, that is not knowingly taking inspired action, doesn't seem to be in line with your manifestation. Like it won't always evoke the idea of your manifestation, like, oh, that could be part of it. Like usually it'll be something that you have no idea has anything to do with your manifestation. So that's a way that you can kind of check in with yourself if you're like tempted and you know that you've been taking knowingly taking a lot of inspired action. If the idea of your manifestation pops in your mind when you go to do something that seems like intuition, it's probably not part of the most efficient route. Also, even if you do get a result that seems in line with your manifestation by knowingly taking inspired action, that may not be the best version of your manifestation, if that makes sense. So usually your world over delivers with what you've been thinking in line with. It's always better than you expect. But if you've also been thinking in line with things not going the way you want, it usually ends up being way worse than you could have ever imagined. I'm sure a lot of you can look back at circumstances where you've done that before you understood what you were doing with your thoughts. So just keep that in mind as well. Like, yes, I got the pay rise when I asked for it from my job, and it ended up being more than I was expecting as well. Again, go watch that video. However, in terms of way to cover the rent increase, for example, there may have been a way that was already in the works that would have resulted with more money left over after rent came out of more necessities came out of my account, for example. I won't know. And also, you can, like, I don't want to overcomplicate things, right? I know that, like, I'm affirming with money and my business has improved. Like, my business has had its best month, for example, the last month than ever before, at a time where we're being scaremongered into thinking that money's like needs to be held on to and things like that. People are obviously like, I've put my prices up at a time like that, first of all, and I've had my best month so far. So that's because I'm still affirming, regardless of me asking for the pay rise from my part-time job, my boss. I'm still affirming that money's getting better for me anyway. Money's still coming flowing into me effortlessly. I'm building more passive ways of making money and all those things. So in that sense, it doesn't matter. But a lot of people will get the thing that they've knowingly taken inspired action to get, and then kind of stop affirming in line and take that as like, that's it. Like, that's the glass ceiling. And what we want to be doing is like getting the full extent of what we want, essentially, is what I'm saying. So I hope that makes sense. So given all of that, again, like, I've been so hesitant to make a video like this because I know that there are some people who are going to take forced action under the guise of inspired action because I've made this video, but essentially everyone needs to learn at their own pace, and not everyone who's watching my videos is brand new to this stuff. And so essentially, you do with this information what you will, but definitely make note of those self-check-ins to do before taking inspired action or choosing, like, knowingly not taking action towards your manifestation, or what you think is the logical link to your manifestation. And check in with yourself, see how you go. I'd love to know in the comments below how you go with that, or if you can relate to anything that I've said, or where you can see that you have taken forced action under the guise of inspired action before. There's no shame in it. We've all done it, and I'll probably do it once in a while still, but it's all just about knowing, well, okay, doesn't matter, I can change it up here. It's totally fine. Or regardless of whatever action I've taken. There's actually, I'd like to share an affirmation with you that I shared on TikTok for physical circumstances. And it is, I don't know how, but regardless of what this looks like, I'm still getting my manifestation, or I'm still getting what I want. I don't know how, but regardless of what all of this looks like, I'm still getting what I want. Comment that below as well. Let's get into the habit of using that affirmation, or your own version of it in your own words. Actually, I'd love to know if, like, that feels good to you to say, or whether there's a way that you would say it in your own verbiage, because that's definitely what I preach. You may hear an affirmation that you like, but if it's not the way you normally speak to yourself, your mind may fight you on it a little more than if you use it in your own way of speaking. Anyway, that's where I'm going to wrap up this video. You're a fucking legend. Don't you ever forget it. And until next time, have a good one.